Hello and welcome to Off the Track. I'm Peter Russell and joining me today is Ben Galvin.
Hello.
George Stonor.
Hi.
Jesse Stevens.
Ahoy hoy.
Matthew.
Hello.
Michael Walker.
Hello.
And Tobias Astill-King.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. You're our number one sponsor, so very important that you're here. Anyway, today we're going to be discussing the thing that has been dominating the news, the thing that's been on everyone's mind that you can't seem to escape. Yes, that's right. I'm talking about the 2020 Australian National Final. So well done to Nebula from Wesley College in WA for being crowned professional class national champions. They were one half of collaboration team Ionic, and they placed 9th at the 2019 World Final. In development class, Sido from Trinity Grammar, or Sado, were the winners there. Obviously, COVID-19 was a big issue that week. The paddock tours for the teams at the Grand Prix were cancelled ahead of the inevitable cancellation of the Grand Prix itself later in the day, although Ascension got a special tour on the Thursday.
Indeed we did, and we met Lando Norris and single-handedly brought down the entire Australian GP.
No, Ben, we can't let that get out.
Sorry. McLaren, please do not sue us.
And unfortunately, we weren't able to get you the promised Andrew Denford interview, but hopefully that will be coming in the future, maybe. Who knows?
Next episode.
Next episode, okay. Pretty ambitious aim. And it was great to have most of the off-the-track team down here in Melbourne. Great to see all of you guys.
It was great to push you on a swing.
Oh yeah, that was quite fun.
Wait, what?
Definitely the highlight of the week.
Haven't you
How-
seen that?
Oh, I thought
No.
seeing me was the
How did I
highlight.
miss out on this? Did you go off on some adventure and not include me?
You went
this,
back
no, no,
to
this
it.
was the week after, on
Oh,
Monday.
okay.
Yeah, Monday.
There's a picture of it, isn't
Yeah,
there?
because it was the day
Oh,
before
there's
we
a video.
left. There is the video of Peter being pushed on a swing.
I filmed the whole
Right,
thing.
this will be included in the podcast description.
no.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
well.
think so.
Sorry, Peter, it's facts.
I
I
haven't
now
actually
have
watched
this.
it myself.
I now have this video, so it will be going in the show notes.
It's going up on Off the Track Instagram and
Oh,
Twitter
dear.
accounts. Make sure
Oh,
to follow
dear.
us.
Oh, that was a
At
good
Off
plug.
the Track podcast and Off the Track Pod for Twitter.
So I was pretty impressed at the competition. Like the bar keeps being raised year after year. Nebula, pretty deserving champions, in my opinion.
Absolutely,
You guys
yeah.
agree? Yeah.
Yeah, they really
Yeah.
just seem to present the whole package, winning, well, obviously best marketing and then all of the engineering awards.
Yeah, and you'd expect that from a world final returning team.
Um,
So, what
there
is
is
that
the other
happening,
half of
Ben?
Ionic, but can we cut this bit out?
Ben,
To be fair, their story is very similar to the alternate F1 story back in 2014.
Oh, yes.
What was that?
So alternate F1 was a team that competed in the 2013 World Finals as Team Odyssey with the purple car, one of the best looking F1 in schools cars to ever exist. But anyway, they were third fastest car at Worlds. They came, I think, 6th at the World Finals or something like that.
Yeah, it was 6. Yeah.
And then they came back the next year to the national finals, and just everything. It was so easy for everything just to come undone. And they came, I think, 6th or 7th at the nationals again. And they were really smart people. They probably deserved to win
I
if
thought
they
it
got
was-
everything together.
No, I think it was actually higher than that. I think it was 4th.
No, because I think they were like their car was very slow. It was like 60 grams.
Right. Okay. I was there, and I think they actually placed higher. But
Where were they from? SA?
Brighton, they were a Brighton
Oh.
team. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Odyssey.
Oh, Odyssey. Yeah.
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 No,
You know, the team that Infinitude took their colours from.
No,
no, that's not how that worked out.
no, it's not how that works. That was
I
a
wonder if anyone's
completely
going to steal the
original
salmon,
process.
the salmon color from Michael.
Oh,
I don't
You
think anyone
would.
wants to take that one.
you
Well, the
would.
other Precision Racing didn't, did they? So,
Well, they didn't take the colour scheme.
no.
so yes, the 2020 Australian National Finals.
Dare you bring us back on topic? This is off the track.
It's kind of expected.
Wasn't that meant to be off the topic that sort of thing happened on?
Yeah, Ben, what are you talking about?
The whole episode's off the
Jeez.
topic.
So yeah, well done to everyone at the Australian National Final. If you saw us as well, good to meet you.
It was a really highly competitive national finals. I imagine it must
yeah.
have been very close between Dark Matter and Nebula.
Well, what were the point margins? They have. Oh, I don't have a
I
copy.
think it was
actually.
exactly 20 points between them. Because Dark
Hang
Matter
on,
absolutely killed it on
let's-
track. They won every track award.
Uh,
Nebula were competitive enough on track, and then off the track, they were obviously very above the rest of the competition.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I think every team this year just went above and beyond of what was previously expected at the last national finals.
yeah, so there's 20 points between first and second, which is pretty close.
That is very close.
I can't calculate the others because I can't do quick maths. So
2 plus 2 is 4. Minus 1, that's 3.
That's
Yes.
getting edited out.
no, that's staying.
No, please edit that out.
I don't want that to ever be heard again.
We need more engineers on this podcast.
Yeah, well, this is only us. I think this is actually only our second episode doing engineering on the podcast.
Please
True.
email careers@offthetrack.net.
Now I have to make that. I hate you.
You could just set up a catch-all, so like anything off the track. Then
I
it's goes
could.
to
We do have another engineer though. Tobias, you were manufacturing engineer of Screaming Demons.
That I was, but I
Oh.
didn't do any engineering. At that point, I was just speechwriter.
Okay,
The orangutan.
should we get back on the track?
Yes.
Yeah.
Talking about engineering, was it last week? No, this week. Well, it would be last week when you're hearing this.
Yes.
F1 in Schools HQ dropped the new 2020 World Final technical regulations, which is very surprising considering this whole pandemic we're in.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if we want to have an engineer speak on this because I know nothing about engineering.
Yes, I think the real pandemic used to be the definitions of the rules that were existing. They've tried to clear that up this year in the regulations. So I think my favorite thing, apart from the big changes that we'll get into a second, is that they've made the definitions a lot clearer and a lot more quantitative. So you're not going to break, especially for the proportional penalties. So say you lose points per millimeter or points per gram, rather than it's just implied from you have to calculate it yourself. You know exactly how many points you lose if you get your measurements wrong. And that helps really nicely with the engineering of the car. They've also made it a lot more diagrams, a lot more simple to read, especially the wing diagram at the end. That's really nice and really well engineered, or really well displaying.
Got a pretty nice render on the front.
Oh, don't speak too highly of yourself. Oh, no, that wasn't yourself. Never mind.
It's not ours. No.
No, I'll just respond with a yeah.
I wasn't sure if they were going to put the best engineered car on there or the world champion car.
Nah, they
'Cause
usually
in,
do
like,
world champions
The
now.
last 2 years, it was world champion and best engineered being the same team. So
Oh, yeah.
We don't talk about that.
then the year before that, there was something a bit different.
Yeah, so I think the two main changes to look into from a rough reading perspective were the front wheel and the rear wheel no longer have to be the same width, which I think will be really helpful for teams trying to reduce their frontal area. Effectively, wheels in engineering are just disgusting because they just screw with aerodynamics badly. And the front wheel's so much more exposed than the rear wheel in these cars. So having the front wheel be a lot thinner will make cars probably a lot more aerodynamic if teams integrate it properly and actually go to the 12 and don't just keep at the 15 because it's easier. It will present more challenges for manufacturing because then you have to do 4 separate types of 2 different types of wheels, so 2 different manufacturing processes, and it'll probably raise the costs and raise the machining time. But it'll probably make cars faster, and the teams that really try and explore that and do well with it, I think will be thriving very well. Less friction as well because there's less contact. The other one is the minimum wing thickness. That has been changed from, I think, 1.5 to 2 millimeters. And I think that's a good change because a lot of wings break at the 1.5 mil thickness. George, any thoughts?
Mostly the same. I mean, I think the most interesting thing is how few changes there are compared to last year. Overall, it hasn't changed much. I don't know whether that's because there was such a fiasco at Worlds last year that they just wanted to minimise that this year. But yeah, the new narrower front wheels should be interesting to see how teams implement them.
Well, my other question for you is, because your rules change quite significantly, for your year because you had to have that triangular wedge cut out at the back of your side pod. Do you reckon that because of that big change, they're just trying to make it converge, or trying to see how many teams can explore that area of the design?
Yeah, I think, well, because there was quite a big change last year and lots of teams not following the rules properly, even at the World Finals, I think this year is just, it's changed little just to give teams the chance to catch up with all of the bigger changes last year. I would imagine that's been a thought process behind the new rules.
If I could just chime in for a moment, what I find most interesting is that there hasn't, as far as I can tell, been a change to the wording around that new rear wing regulation from last year. Because if you were listening to previous episodes of Off the Track, you would know that caused a lot of controversy at the World Finals itself and led to them allowing some alternate interpretations of the rule. So I was under the assumption that they were going to be changing the wording to make it more specific.
Well, I think one thing they've done is they've changed the diagrams at the back about the rear wing. They've added specific front wing and specific back wing diagrams.
Ah, okay.
And I think that's what the problem was last year. I think the wording was solid, but there were diagrams at the back which implied that the older style of a split rear wing was still perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So they've now got separate diagrams, and I think that's where, well, that's what lots of teams last year were making their arguments that they hadn't broken the rule from the diagram at the back.
So will that mean that they will no longer allow the alternate interpretation?
I think so.
Yeah.
Unless, I mean, they probably only did it because so many people screwed it up. So,
if you had one team that broke that rule and didn't have a solid argument against it, they wouldn't have changed the things or anything
exactly.
like
Yeah,
that.
it's just poor Gary Anderson was forced to stay until past midnight at the competition explaining to teams.
I think something highlighted by that kind of rule change, though, is that there's a lot of teams that don't read the regulations hard enough. So one of the biggest pieces of advice me and George and everyone can pass on is please read the technical regulations as much as you can.
And get a second team member to check it over if you've only got one engineer, because you might miss something.
Because that's something that happened in Precision. We had 3 engineers. Half the team was engineers, and they all checked the car over before it went. And I think we had Peter Brown, a collaborator, check over it as well. And so we lost 0 points in scrutineering because of that. And so it's the best thing you can do is more eyes will have more opportunities to catch the mistakes that other people have made.
Yeah, get your whole team to do it. If you, even graphic designers and everything, they can still try and understand the regulations to a point.
They should.
Well, I think that goes for every single competition element as well, even on the enterprise side, your portfolios, etc. Make sure everything's been ticked off on the criteria and in the regulations.
For us, we had some physical laser cut measurement tools that just allowed all our team members to check the components of our cars to make sure they all fit within the maximum millimeter elements. So it's definitely worthwhile, and it doesn't have to be too much. It's just simply put how do you interpret it and put it there. I would also suggest maybe designing your cars after you've had a good read of the regulations. Spend a good week or two just reading them and seeing what you understand and what you don't. Don't try and jump into car designs before you're fully reading them.
Was there anything else interesting in the regulations that anyone found?
I'm still having a bit of a read around.
They said they fundamentally, rewrote the entire regulations. But I mean, it's still the same, but they say, please read the whole document without assumptions from previous rules documents. So I assume that means they renumbered stuff and etc.
Yeah, well, they're 10 pages longer than last year.
Oh. Is that just because of the new diagrams, or?
The diagrams are slightly bigger, but also I think they've just been a bit clearer. So last year they had, they have the sort of chapters. The front and rear wings were in the same chapter, but now I think they're their own chapter.
Yeah, this just seems to be much clearer. It's just much clearer in what it's trying to say and to find your way through. Everything's very well laid out. All of the diagrams are very clear. The wording seems to be much clearer.
They seem to have added 2 or 3 pages just with title pages and that kind of things. So
one thing I've just noticed is they've also documented for some of their tests how they're actually going to conduct the checks for your. So say for the rear wing clear airflow, they're going to put a 5mm spherical ball in between the wing and the canister, or between the wing and any other part of the car, to make sure you've got that clear airspace. So maybe teams knowing how it's done will allow them to maybe do the tests a lot better themselves.
Yeah.
Yes, that's definitely something that I personally would have appreciated during competition, because we ended up having a dispute over measuring methods with some of the scrutineers.
They definitely have some interesting ways of measuring, to say the least.
just going on a little bit of a tangent here, Jesse, did any of your cars, negative filter or otherwise, have points taken off them?
We did have some problems. One of our cars at the Nationals had some pain in the chamber, which was 1 point off. But apart from that, we got deemed legal at the start, but then our definition was overruled, and then we got allowed to. We didn't lose any points. At the Worlds, we lost 12 points for our chamber being modified or having the canister be overhung. And apart from that, though, we didn't really lose too many points deliberately as such.
Right, because you deliberately made your car illegal to make your lures work far better, didn't you?
Yes, so
Yeah.
that they were the only intentional rules we broke. We didn't really lose any points for rules that we didn't intentionally break.
Right, and George, is that the same with you?
We didn't lose any any points at Worlds, but in every competition before that, we were a bit rubbish at scrutineering.
Right. Okay. And what
and
was
something
the...
always slipped past. And actually, at the Nationals, we got the most points overall, but we broke a critical, so ended up second.
Right.
So, scrutineering's important.
Yeah. It is. And so, what kind of things did you miss at Nationals?
So the problem we had was our nose cone went behind the centerline axis.
Right.
Was the rule we broke. But if we labelled that part of the car as wheel support, then we wouldn't have broken it. So it was all a bit confusing. And we got our engineering drawings slightly wrong. So that's what went wrong. And we were told if your engineering drawings said this was wheel support rather than nose cone, we wouldn't be deducting points, but we messed up. So
sorry, George, to ask you a question. Was that you just you ran out of time to do your engineering drawings proper, or you were inexperienced in that area?
More we just missed it. So I did the CAD of the car, but then Freddie and Lewis did the engineering drawings, and basically it was my fault for not conveying that this part needs to be highlighted as wheel support on the engineering drawings. And so it was just us messing up. And then also by that point, only by the Worlds did we ever really get our scrutineering process right of everyone going over everything and trying to spot mistakes.
Right. The reason I ask is just because from States to Worlds, I don't think we lost a single point in precision racing for scrutineering, which may come off as a bit of a brag, but it's really not. I'm just a little bit unsure of how teams lose points on scrutineering. Obviously, as you said, George, you just weren't too sure with that kind of wheel support, nose cone type of definition. But it seems to be one of the easiest areas that's most black and white for teams to keep points is in scrutineering. And so I think teams need to plan ahead to properly scrutineer their cars and not think of it as something that they can do at the end. It's a constant process, you know. Why are you testing a car if it's illegal, you know, like extremely illegal?
Yeah, you're fully right.
Yeah.
We always looked at the scrutineering. It was 110 points when we competed. We looked at the scrutineering as the first 110 points we'd get. It's if you've got 110 points, that's only 780 or 790 more that you need to get after that. It's already
Yeah.
a ninth of your points that you can control if you get all of them. You can't control any other elements of the competition that well. So if teams look at it and actually see how much of a benefit it is to have the highest amount of points, you're not lagging behind any of your competitors, and you've got a good building block for a good competition.
In our experience as Pentessalate, obviously as Ascension, it ended up 100% legal. But as Pentessalate, we always found that it was a manufacturing issue. Like the card's design would be 100% legal, but then in manufacturing, something would have gone wrong and it would have gone over one of the tolerances and ended up with a illegal measurement.
Yeah, wings are usually, the front wing is usually a problem there because you want to really get that as high as possible.
Yeah, and even little things, just like the thickness of balsa or just a little bit of paint getting inside the chamber.
Virtual cargo, I know we had a couple of issues with, especially considering the amount of times I had to spray a mountain load of paint in order to thicken it up. But
well, a lot of that was then issues with the CNC machine just being off.
Right. So, Jesse, you mentioned earlier you had acrylic measuring tools or something, laser cut tools.
So we got a big sheet of acrylic, and then we made a gauge or a caliper for every single rule, and it had indications and markings. And then whenever we were physically testing our legalities of our cars, we'd just make sure that they always fit within those calipers before we did anything else. You have to be very careful though, because when you're laser cutting certain things, sometimes they can be a bit inaccurate. But they were very helpful for getting a general gist of our car's legality.
Because in our engineering interview for Worlds, one of the questions that they did ask was whether we did any, I don't want to say quality assurance, but do any after manufacture measuring of our car? And in Precision, we didn't. We should have, but it's just something that we never really considered. And I wasn't on the engineering team, so I can't speak to why we didn't. But hearing what Jesse's just said about those acrylic laser cut things makes a lot of sense to me. And if your school has access to a laser cutter, a sheet of acrylic like that will be like $20 or $30 Australian. So I would advise teams do look at something like that. The judges threw out some other ideas in our engineering interview, like laser measurements and that kind of thing. They're far more finicky, and most teams won't be able to do that. And I'm not convinced that laser scanning your car is actually going to help that much. What do you think, Jesse and George?
Keep it very simple. Everything. They're very black and white rules, so why would you make it very ambiguous? Very simple. A vernier caliper, micrometer, and maybe laser cut gauges if you want to. You probably don't need them, but just making sure that you're always checking the legality of your car, both virtually and physically, as soon as you've got it. I mean, when we were doing our final cars at Worlds, we checked it as soon as it finished manufacturing. Every coat of paint we did, we made sure that our cars were fully tested and fully ready to be manufactured and legal. You've got to, I think our attention to detail in that helped us out a lot with our point scoring. The problem is that I think a lot of teams' downfalls are they run out of time. All their manufacturing or their CAD process goes way too long, and then that ends up leaving them little time to really care too much about the legality of their car physically, or they have some oversights, or they don't do as well in the painting process, which means that they lose a few points in that. So I think one of the best pieces of advice I could offer is maybe just spend a bit more time. Have fixed deadlines so you can make sure that you've got the time to do the quality checks you need to do.
Just another thing on the quality control section of manufacturing. An idea is what we did is we had a grade system. So we had A through F, and we wrote out specific criteria of tolerances for cars being in that system. So like how far off it could be in thickness, as well as paint finish and that kind of thing. And if there were any breakages. And I think that's a good thing to put in the portfolio. to help.
Yes, I believe
Yeah.
we had that too, and I remember talking to the judges about that.
Yeah.
So on Jesse's point about not particularly needing the guides, I think what the judges were looking for and what teams need to consider is just a system to double check their cars. And we've talked about getting
Yeah.
other people to check it and that kind of thing. And that system for Infinitude was obviously those gauges and that kind of thing. But it's just making sure that all the cars go through the same process of scrutineering, and that you've documented that process in your engineering portfolio. Do you guys think that's probably just the best way of putting it? The simplest
Yeah.
way of putting it?
I think moral of today's podcast, if you take anything away, check your cars.
Yes. And document it. That's probably one of our biggest downfalls of Infinitude, and why we didn't win was because we just didn't document enough of our engineering.
I don't know, that portfolio when I looked at it was pretty full. Like,
But in hindsight, and I mean every team has the experience of looking back in hindsight.
hindsight is
But-
2020.
But I think we didn't document enough of our research, and I'm not sure. I didn't get to read the George's portfolio, but I'm sure he's done a lot more documentation, and their team's done a lot more on that kind of side. So effectively, our summary of the 2020 World Technical Regulations is that the front wheel width is now 12 millimeters instead of 15 millimeters. That should allow for some innovative designs. The minimum wing thickness has changed to 2 mil, and we've just discussed how you can keep your car legal and some processes you can do for that. I think that's pretty much the end of this episode for us. We've got another one coming very soon, so keep tuned for that, and I'll let Peter do the outro.
Right, well, thank you for listening to Off the Track this episode. You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. If you enjoyed this episode, you can rate the show on Apple Podcasts. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Off the Track Podcasts, and you can visit us at our website, www.offthetrack.net.